Rhiniúis cáide bhhailm anáid a chomráid an seo ag an dara tascántas alíana agin le Charlotte ní Chealaí. Yeah. You're very welcome. This is the second exhibition that we've had of Charlotte's, and it's just wonderful to see such a large crowd here this evening. It's 3 years ago since her first exhibition, and things have changed, and certainly her style of painting has changed quite considerably, and it's very interesting to see her taking new challenges on board. I am not going to talk so much about the paintings as I'm going to introduce you to Father Pat O'Brien. Now, it's always difficult in terms of finding somebody to open an exhibition. Poets are by far the best. Philosophers are second best, and priests are third best. Especially parish priests from Carlow Strand. So would you welcome, please, Father Pat O'Brien.
Des, friends. I first saw a painting by Charlotte in a Kenny-sponsored group show in Castlebar General Hospital, and I was immediately drawn to it. That sort of frisson you get sometimes when a work of art, when you know that the artist is utterly at one with the material, with the medium that he or she is using. When sort of everything comes together in the painting. When the vision of the creator is realized utterly on the canvas or on the paper. When the colours are true to each other. And I think that's the first thing I'd say about the work of Charlotte Kelly. She's a superb colorist. Not one of her works betray the first duty, I think, of every artist, to obey the command of the oil itself, of the material itself, its own sense of the truth and the light or the colour which reveals the light. In the years since that first sight of her work, I've been blessed, I suppose, by seeing more of her work and seeing it change, and your first instinct sort of been justified by her larger work, both her 2006 exhibition Transcending Light and this current one, Light and Silence. They're deeper and deeper explorations, I suppose, basically of colour. And if the titles of both shows include the word light, it's a word and an idea, I think, that has gone through, at this stage, fairly dark testings. When they have the clarity and the luminosity of a moon on a very clear night, you're aware very much of the clarity of the moon, but you're also deeply aware of the darkness surrounding the moon, and beyond that maybe also the dark side of the moon, which is always somewhere beyond human sight, but you're always aware of it. If you contrast both of her major exhibitions, I think it will reveal a deepening use of the darker colours and an equal mastery of them. I think a huge mastery actually of the darker colours. And when the light is transcended, when it enters the silence of contemplation, it's all the brighter because it has been tested by the cauldrons of darkness. I think that comes very powerfully from nearly all of those paintings, but from a huge number of them anyway. And that seems to me to be the huge measure of this exhibition. Last week I met Charlotte here. We were speaking of many things, but we were speaking especially, I suppose, of the loss of John O'Donoghue, a mutual friend who spoke at the opening of Transcending Light. And I recalled my pilgrimage, if that's the right word, to Clare for John's funeral, and how the night sky going down that first night had suddenly erupted in what you can only call actually a pathetic fallacy, that old sort of phrase. And it did so actually in the imagery of Mark Rothko, two huge oblongs of colour, one a blinding white and the other dark, I suppose, beyond dark, adjacent to one another and bleeding into one another. I've never seen anything like it in my life. There are probably, I'm sure, some scientific explanations for such a phenomenon on such a night like that. But an age which refuses to deal with the possibility that nature itself and the work of the spirit and the work of the imagination and the struggle for creativity and freedom have some sort of innate connections, share some sort of divine pathos for all that is living and all that is dead, is an age that cannot deal with the wild hungers of the spirit and refuses to deal with them. I think that the landscapes of Charlotte Kelly breathe the air of those sort of deeper insights in a way that's in some way, I think, maybe very distinctly Celtic. The natural world, sky, earth, land, gardens, words from the titles of many of those paintings, glow with an inner light which should suggest not so much a supernatural world, but something beyond us, but something that, some sense of an inner harmony between those sort of worlds. To use a word made sacred, I suppose, by Gerard Manley Hopkins, there is a sort of an in-stress of the sacred in all those paintings. The supposed sort of divisions these days between the sacred and the secular is, I think, a very futile sort of separation. The doctrines of incarnation and indeed creation itself belie those sort of divisions. Art which is true to itself, which is true to its colours, its tone, its mark on the canvas, create, I think, a renewal of that ancient bond, that ancient unity between what we facilely call the secular and the sacred. I'm very, very conscious tonight of hidden sort of guests at this feast that is this exhibition. I have already mentioned, obviously, John O'Donoghue, but there is another presence, deep presence, and it's that of Tony O'Malley. Charlotte has quoted Tony on the opening page of your catalogue, his famous quotation, "Never be swayed by anything but by your own work and vision." That resolution, which Charlotte has said has guided sort of her life and work, has also been, is also, I think, actually deeper than that. There are all sorts of other sort of affinities and similarities. I think, for instance, obviously think of Tony leaving the bank, leaving the safe, secure job of the bank for the very empty tills of art in the Ireland of his time. And I think of Charlotte leaving nursing for the healing sort of processes of art as well. These aren't easy decisions to make for anybody in any age, but they witness some deep inner call of their lives, which the paintings, I think, bear witness to. Beyond the example of Tony O'Malley, which Charlotte acknowledges hugely, I think, in those words in the catalogue, there's also, I think, a deeper affinity as well. As someone who loved Tony very deeply, both as man and as painter, I've always had a particular love for his mastery of the darker hues of his paintings, his blacks and greys and all the sort of gradations in between them. They're the dark of Rembrandt, they're the dark night of the soul of John of the Cross, the necessary sort of Good Friday before Easter Sunday. I never thought, genuinely never thought, that that central element in the work of Tony O'Malley would resonate with a younger Irish artist in a very, very different Ireland. But many of the paintings in this exhibition are a deep dialogue, I think a deep dialogue with Tony O'Malley, not just in his commitment, but in his best work also. It's an influence which has been utterly absorbed, distilled, and also I think made hugely new in Charlotte's own art and spirituality and gift. They're utterly her own. You sort of know the Tony thing, but you couldn't mistake them for Tony. They're utterly her own, utterly her own. I want to finish this reflection with a very precious memory which brings together the two people I've mentioned, John O'Donoghue and Tony O'Malley. John and I had gone down together to see Tony in his, what turned out to be his final illness. As it turned out, it was roughly a month or so before he died. And after spending some time with him in his bedroom, we'd been brought down by Jane to the studio to see work that was been got ready and packed for a retrospective of his work in Dublin. We were there looking at the paintings, and after a time Tony's helper wheeled him down in a wheelchair to join us. The next hour or so must rank as one of the most important of all our lives, the living people who were there. I know deeply that John always felt so. We even talked about it about 2 weeks before John died. I know that Jane talks about it very deeply. Nothing was actually said. Jane took each painting and placed it into Tony's hands. Work from different decades and different periods and different places indeed in his life. Tony would trace out the lines, feel the marks, touch the surfaces. I said that nothing was said, and nothing was really. It was an experience beyond words. However, one word was actually spoken. Holding one particular painting, it was actually a portrait of Jane. After touching it the way I think Mary Magdalene longed to touch the risen Christ, Tony looked up at us and said, "Clarity, clarity." Tony O'Malley was profoundly a man of words, very familiar with the best of literature, philosophy, and the wisdoms of all the religions and the wisdoms of all the wisdom. So the clarity he was speaking of was the clarity of the best of sort of European thought, the clarity, the light that breaks through when every human gift, whether it's love or music or art or paint, are true to that inner call of perfection. Some sort of light, some sort of clarity just shatters and breaks through. In this exhibition, as in her first one, Charlotte Kelly has used the word light, as I said in the title. In this show, the light has transcended itself and I think found the silence. Titles are so important for her, and rightly so I think. These paintings deserve, I think, the silent attention that will reveal their light. I will risk declaring this exhibition open to your spirits with that word of Tony O'Malley: clarity. Thank you.
Well, he actually has taken the words out of my mouth, because I was going to say that you must come back and see this exhibition in isolation, in silence, because that's when you can really, it's wonderful to see such a large crowd here, but believe me,